women with ADHD are master hackers. So what is our favorite hack that we want to share with each other? And every woman said that her favorite time was going off into the breakout rooms and talking with the other moms and recognizing that they were having experiences similar to hers.
This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. Before I jump in, get on the wait list for Create Your Program. It's the place where I help therapists and healers to create their signature programs beyond private practice. If you feel drawn to working and making money with your gifts and your experience in a new way, this is for you. We're going to work together in a small group over 11 weeks so that you can launch your program at the end. I'm going to walk you through the process step by step. Participants of CYP describe going from having a lot of ideas but not being sure where to start, all the way to having a program they're proud to be offering. So go to rebeltherapist.me/create and get on the list. And that way you're going to hear about every special early offer I have before anyone else. And speaking of that, there's going to be a short enrollment period in just a couple of weeks this month, June 2024. If you sign up in June, you're going to get almost 3 months of early access to the entire curriculum before our live calls start in September. And that's at no extra cost. So that's going to be a really good fit for you if you're someone who likes to take your time working through videos and working on your business. And then you can actually be ahead when we start the live calls in September. So head over to rebeltherapist.me/create and just get your name on the list right now. Okay, now for the episode. Some people create the program they needed for themselves. It's like this. As you move through a challenging situation and you grow from it and learn about yourself and eventually find community, you realize this process did not need to be quite this hard. I want to create a process or a container to help people move through this with more support. And if you're thinking that, and you also happen to be a therapist or a healer, you realize you're uniquely equipped to create something really effective and powerful. My guest, Robin Gibler, did just that. Robin is a licensed professional counselor specializing in maternal mental health. She's developed a program for moms with ADHD. As a mom with ADHD herself, she's passionate about providing education and support for other women to create their own version of what motherhood looks like and care for kids who may also be neurodivergent. Let's get into it. Welcome, Robin. I'm so happy that you're here.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So I want to know, well, I already know. I want them to know. Will you tell us about the groups that you created?
Yeah. Well, so the most recent group that I've created was for moms with ADHD who either were diagnosed or strongly suspect they have ADHD, so that they could come together with other moms, including myself. I'm an ADHD mom myself, and talk about our experiences, learn about how our differently wired brains work, and relate that to our parenting, to our lives in general. And again, do that in a community where someone might actually have a similar experience to them.
That's awesome. So being a mom with ADHD, what's like one way that you find this either shows up for you or you just notice over and over again ADHD showing up? And maybe it's sometimes in great ways, but like, how do you notice it showing up particularly for moms?
Yeah. So I'll give you a short answer and then maybe we can do a longer answer later.
Yeah.
I would say in my day-to-day life, and what I hear from clients most often, is it shows up as kind of a variable experience. So some days I can have lots of energy and be very focused and get a lot done. And then other days, no matter what I try, no matter what I want, I can't get anything done. And I did an exercise once where it asked us to think about personifying what our ADHD felt like. And for me, what I came up with is there is this little girl, she's probably like 2 or 3, and she's tugging on me and like, Mom, Robin. And I'm like, wait a minute, just a second. I'm trying to get this thing done. And she lasts about 2 seconds. She's like, Robin. And I'm like, please, just a minute. And I'm just trying so hard to get done what I'm working on, but I can't get past this little one like pulling on me constantly. And so then maybe I finally give up and try to meet her needs. But her needs are never ending, just as we all know, like if we have a little one in our lives, that there's always another need, right? But if you have ADHD, it feels like that whether you have a little one there or not. It's like there's something inside of you that's pulling you away from whatever it is you're trying to focus on. And it can be very difficult to navigate that.
Yeah. And then, okay, so you were saying like for a mom, then I'm wondering, like, there's this idea that not only being present with your kiddo, but like there's all this other stuff that it means to be like a quote unquote good mom, like what everything is supposed to look like, what you're supposed to be on top of. There's this pressure about what that means, what you're supposed to do yourself. And I'm wondering, like, how does that interact? Like those pressures, those standards that can come in, most of which are bullshit, but like, how do those standards intersect, do you think, with ADHD?
Yeah. So I'm a maternal mental health specialist, and I work with moms and have for the past 15 years, moms of all types. And what we know is for all moms, the expectations, all of the various roles that we're expected to fill is just ridiculous. It's too much. It's overwhelming to everyone right now, and there's lots of burnout happening. When I talk to my clients about this, I refer a lot of times to them as the motherhood myth or motherhood myths, that we're all supposed to be able to do things that are just assigned to us as women and as mothers that are supposed to come naturally to us, right? And there's this idea of an ideal mom, what she looks like, what she's supposed to be able to do at all times, coordinating everything for everyone, and of course staying calm and zen-like in the process. And it's just too much. So when you layer on top of that experience of what that's like for all moms, then you layer on top an ADHD or a neurodivergent experience. Many of the things that are the invisible mom roles, the things like coordinating and keeping up with and getting everyone where they're supposed to be on time, those things are much harder for women with ADHD. They're referred to as executive function skills. They're harder for us. And so now, not only do we have the impossible standard that everyone has, but we have this extra layer where we're not even able to do what we see our peers doing. Our peers will be complaining about something that it's hard for them. But we know and we feel and see that we're not even keeping up with what they're keeping up with. And this results in this real internalized shame that for all of us has been around probably from childhood, where we compared ourselves to our peers and had this recognition that we somehow weren't able to do what they were able to do. But no one had a label for it because we weren't diagnosed. No girls were, pretty much. So it was just, we just have to try harder. Surely, you must just not be trying very hard. You're just not paying enough attention. You're not listening. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And the experience that we had was just trying harder and harder, but not being able to do these things. So there's a lot of internalized shame starting in childhood. And then you become a mother and you're really primed to feel that that's true of you, that it's just you. You just can't do it. There's something wrong with you as a woman, but really as a mom. And I think a lot of moms who have ADHD or who are neurodivergent have this feeling that they can't really articulate to anyone that maybe they shouldn't have become a mom. Maybe they're not cut out for this. And that's really hard because it's not something you can talk about with others. Yeah, and so it just kind of adds to that sense of shame.
Do you notice with moms a particular age where of their kid where this starts showing up in the biggest way? Like, does it show up a lot for people with infants? Does it tend to show up this kind of feeling of shame you're talking about? Does it show up more like when maybe kiddos get to school age? Like, are there moments when this kind of gets particularly difficult?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I get to bring in some information that I think is so important. It's some of the newest research is around how our hormones affect our ADHD symptoms. And so for girls and women, our ADHD symptoms tend to get exacerbated around times when our estrogen drops or our progesterone estrogen is somehow out of balance. So we'll see symptoms getting worse in adolescence, symptoms getting worse in the second half of our cycle, symptoms getting worse at postpartum, and symptoms getting worse in perimenopause. So, for a woman who's trying to get pregnant, obviously she's cycling. She's going to have some really hard days. Potentially postpartum, we know there's a much higher risk for postpartum depression and anxiety for women with ADHD because of that sensitivity to the hormonal change, right? So of course that means infancy. When she has an infant, things are going to be hard for her. And then, when our children are probably becoming teenagers, which is going to already be fraught, we're likely in perimenopause and we're going to start feeling it then as well.
Yeah. And then that's where, it can happen all through your kid's school life. But I feel like when my kids each entered into adolescence, there was more of a need for me to be like this momager, with homework and deadlines and staying on top of 80 million things. So that's sure. Bad timing right there yes. too. Yeah. Okay. So then for starting this group, what told you this program is needed? It's going to be really helpful for particularly moms with ADHD to be together and to be with you.
Yeah, well, I think that it was a combination of my own experience as an ADHD mom and wanting to create a group that would have been wonderful for me when I had my children. And then hearing from my clients, who many of them have ADHD, about their experiences. So, we've talked a little bit about internalized shame, and when you have a child and you're experiencing that shame, it can be easy to isolate, to keep that hidden. And we know that moms, more than anything, actually need to be in community and in a community where they're seen and heard and can feel valued. There can be experiences, unfortunately, in more neurotypical community where the opposite effect can happen. So I like to tell a story about when my second was young. I joined a mom's club. It was a very big mom's club. I was very excited because I knew I needed support. It had childcare built in. It was going to have these fun speakers. And when I joined, I had to sign something saying that, I would be willing to do a few different things, that I would take part as a member of the community. So I think there was something where I was expected to come once or twice and either help set up or help put away things or help with some sort of marketing. And then every week I was supposed to bring, everyone in the group brought something to share for a potluck. So we already have a meeting that starts at a specific time that you're supposed to get your children there early to check into childcare. You're supposed to bring now a potluck item, and you're going to have extra duties. For a mom that's already struggling when she has an infant or a toddler, to add these things on, to me, is just crazy. I actually sent a message to this mom's club later when I became a perinatal therapist and was like, please rethink this. And the experience that I had was that I would try so hard to get there on time, but time management is not an ADHD strength. So I would be running late, trying to stop by the grocery store to grab some food because, of course, I hadn't made something. I was definitely not up to making something on my own, which would make me even later. And many times I would actually sit in the parking lot in tears because I felt too ashamed to go inside because I was 20 or 30 minutes late. So to me, that's a really good example of something that I'm sure means well, and it was very helpful for a lot of women. But for the women who are most struggling or the ADHD moms, this is going to be really hard for them to do anything except reinforce their sense of maybe this motherhood thing is too much for me. Right?
Yeah, like maybe I'm not a good mom. Like, look at all those moms in there with their homemade potluck items on time, volunteering, and like, I'm not doing that. God, that's awful. That's so awful. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that doesn't really stop. As you were saying, like when you have school-age children, there's so many expectations on moms to, get your kids up on time and get them ready and get them to school on time. And then, show up, be that PTA mom, volunteer in the classroom. After school, make sure you do that reading. I've heard as much as an hour from some of my clients. Like, that's crazy. So 10 minutes or whatever amount of reading and help them with their homework and get them to bed on time. And this is all executive function skills. So these are all hard for moms with ADHD. And many of us had a hard time doing these things for ourselves before we had children. So now we're supposed to do them for ourselves plus our children. And many times added on to that, of course, in our society, we're supposed to also coordinate our husband or partner as well if we have a male partner. So there's just so much that's put on women.
Yeah, so much. We'll get right back to this episode. I just wanted to pause for a moment to tell you about my offer for therapists and healers who want to expand beyond private practice and launch their own programs. You get to be in a group of driven and open-hearted folks like yourself, and you'll be launching your own pilot program. This all happens in my 10-week container, Create Your Program. Go to rebeltherapist.me/create to learn more. Okay, let's get back into the episode. So in your group, I'm curious about what the kind of the transformation has been for those moms. So my assumption, and you're going to tell me if I'm right or wrong, I know a bit about your business from you going through CYP, but there's a lot I don't know about what went on in your group. So my guess is that this group was not like the place where you were going to like teach time management skills or organizational skills, but more about that self-acceptance and like normalizing and like more of an emotional transformation. But is that right? Or what was the transformation like for people?
Yeah, absolutely. So I come from a psychodynamic lens. I love looking back and seeing how early experiences formed who we are today. And so what I was doing with clients was we would take the first part of each coaching session and I would provide a bit of psychoeducation about the ADHD brain or ADHD girls or women's experience. And then I would have them do an exercise where they would relate that to themselves. Sometimes that exercise would be writing or journaling, or sometimes it would be some sort of art. And then I would send them off into breakout rooms to talk with the other moms about what they learned in that exercise. And then we would come back together, sometimes do a little bit of a summary, or maybe we would do something where we would say, okay, let's all tell what is our favorite hack. Women with ADHD are master hackers. So what is our favorite hack that we want to share with each other? And every woman said that her favorite time was going off into the breakout rooms and talking with the other moms and recognizing that they were having experiences similar to hers.
All right. So tell me about how you decided what the format was going to be of your group. Like what those psychoeducational pieces were going to be that you would include and which ones you wouldn't, because I'm imagining with all of your experience and your personal experiences that it must have been hard to pare it down to what you were going to include and what you were going to exclude. Like, how did you make that decision?
Yes. My group that I did first was 6 sessions over 12 weeks. And I wanted to start at the beginning where we talked about what it was like as a girl with ADHD and really trying to explore maybe even things that we had not put together as part of our ADHD beforehand, so that we could start to untwine some of that internalized shame that I had suspected was there for all of them. And then working towards thinking about ourselves as mothers, thinking about our experience with our own mother and how things were different. I think I did a session on thinking about societal expectations for women and mothers and how our experience matched and didn't match that. And then I think because it was coming up on summer break, we actually did one on what do we do in the summertime? Just a very practical, what were summers like for you? You know, the idea of what were summers like for you as a child? What are summers like for you now that you're a mom? You know, how do you incorporate some things for yourself and not make it all about the children? So we did some things like that. One of the reasons that I'm actually developing a new program currently that is going to be a longer program was because of what you mentioned, that there's so much that we couldn't get into in 6 sessions. And I think it would be really fun to bring in themes that are maybe based on the latest research and applying those to our lives. Also doing things that maybe aren't my strong point, like executive function skills. So I'm looking forward to doing a group where I can bring in some guest speakers, including an executive function coach that can answer questions for moms.
That's wonderful. That makes me think of like in Create Your Program, we just actually did the call today with our legal expert. And it's so delightful to watch people getting their questions answered around all of the legal aspects of creating a program that I am just, even if I were to learn all of this stuff, like it's just never going to be my skill set. And I love that. I could totally imagine how wonderful that will be for you and for them to have somebody come in where that's their thing and you get to kind of like watch and facilitate.
Yes.
So in making it longer, so how many weeks are you thinking of expanding it to?
So in true ADHD fashion, I'm kind of making up my own thing and thinking about doing a hybrid between a small group coaching program and a membership community that somewhat follows the school year. So what I'm considering is doing something from September to June that moms can do part of the year. I'm hoping a cohort will want to do the whole year together and meet. I'm not completely sure on this one, but probably have meetings as much as weekly so that people can come as often as they like, and then have a guest speaker like once a month. And then, you know, if they want to, they can join the next year. Just when their kids go back to school, they can come back to our ADHD Moms Club and learn more and meet more moms.
Okay. And so the one you started with was 6 sessions. So this would be a pretty big expansion.
Yeah, I'm thinking of it less as the membership community model that requires many, many members and lots of coursework and things like that. And more like there's a lot of opportunities for you to be in a room with other moms and to learn new things. But more than learning, we can learn on our own. We can go off, and women with ADHD are really good at researching and deep diving, hyper-focusing when they want to. So we can do that on our own. What we can't do is come back to a community of other ADHD moms and talk about what does this look like in real life and how do I feel about it, and these things that, for most of the moms in my practice, and I would say myself too, we don't have mom friends that we know have ADHD who we can take these things to and talk about them. And I know for myself even, I'll learn something new and I'll be really excited about it, and I'll go talk to my husband who does not have ADHD, and I can just see that he totally doesn't understand what I'm talking about. Or another one of my mom friends, they try hard to understand, but they don't really get it. So how wonderful to be able to talk with someone who can relate.
Yes, 100%. So, okay, will you tell us a little bit about what comes to mind when you think about how ADHD shows up in your business, or like any strengths or challenges you notice that you experience? Like you just mentioned, your husband doesn't have ADHD and you do. When it comes to business, how does ADHD show up? And like, are there ways that you notice you work with it, or like ways that you have arranged your work life that really work for you?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. And I do want to preface by saying that we're generalizing somewhat and talking about women with ADHD, but we are all slightly different from each other, right? And have our own unique strengths. So my experience may not be exactly your experience. What I found, though, is that there are things that I am very good at and come naturally to me, and these other things that, no matter how hard I try, just are going to be a problem. And I had a neuropsychologist who actually diagnosed me with ADHD give me wonderful advice and just said, when you find those things, hire someone to do them for you. So for me, I tend to be a visionary. I love coming up with ideas. I love connecting and networking with other colleagues and people in my industry. And the things that are harder for me are going to be the things that require executive function skills. So the little details and the bookkeeping and just making sure that I keep up with all of those little details. I've noticed something for myself. I read very, very quickly. It's very hard for me to read slowly. And I can miss really important words like not. I've recently recognized not is a very important word. I'll read something and I'm like, oh, this doesn't make sense. And then I'll go back. I'm like, oh, no, she's not that Robin. Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So details, I sometimes have to go back over things, to make sure that I haven't missed something.
Okay, that makes sense. And then do you find, so being a visionary, being good at starting things, being good at sounds like also the big picture of moving things forward. So you try to hire people for more of the detail-oriented stuff. And then I'm assuming then that also means that you sort of prioritize giving yourself time to be that visionary. Is that right?
I do. I started something about 5 years ago when I was a group practice owner, which I did for a while. I had a practice of 11 clinicians at one point. And I recognized that I really needed to go away and give myself a lot of time and space in order to think about the direction my business was heading and what I wanted to do. And so I started going away and giving myself these mini retreats, which I've continued doing. I usually do anywhere from 2 to 4 of those, where I'll go away for 2 to 4 days at a time, and many times near an ocean, because I find that very therapeutic, and just think about my life and what I might want to do differently. I feel very privileged to be able to do this. I have older children now, and it's easier for me to get away. I don't know if I wouldn't have allowed myself probably when I was younger and before I knew that I had ADHD. I think one of the things that's really positive about diagnosis is that you can learn about how your brain works best and start to give yourself permission for what you need. So for me, if I feel really overwhelmed, I'm like, okay, this is too much. I need to back off from this and give myself whatever space I need, whatever help I need, rather than just feeling like I wasn't trying hard enough or there was something wrong with me that I wasn't able to get something.
Yeah. So those mini retreats, do you give yourself an agenda for those, or do you just let yourself have the time and see what comes?
A lot of times I have an idea of something I want to think about, but I really tried to lean into being more present and just letting my body, for one, my nervous system. So another thing about ADHD that people don't always realize is we're highly sensitive, and our nervous system can get really dysregulated just by all the stimuli. And so a lot of times I need a day or two just for my nervous system to calm down and for me to be present with my thoughts and to be able to think about things in a way that isn't like it is when I'm home, where I'm going from task to task to task, sometimes very quickly, and also getting pulled away by all the members of my family and my clients' needs.
Okay, a couple things. You just named, I think that I just got on such a visceral level, that there's the thing of your nervous system. And I know you said everybody's different, but if your nervous system needs downtime, you don't get that as a mom. You often just don't get that as a mom. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And then also, you said that you ran a group practice with 11 therapists. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of details.
Yes.
That's I used to run a group practice. I think that at its peak, it had 3 clinicians besides me. It's a lot of admin and details. Was that the wrong fit for you? It was the wrong fit for me. Was that the wrong fit for you?
It was. Mm-hmm. It was. I was so enamored with the idea of giving other mom therapists a space where they could choose how many clients they were going to have and make a good wage, even if they decided to see 17 instead of 35, like the other group practices wanted them to see. And I really enjoyed aspects of mentoring, bringing on therapists and mentoring them and creating beautiful office spaces for them and running group meetings. All those were so much fun. But then all of the details of the admin part made it where I was doing less and less of the things that I loved and more admin, even with, I think at the end I had a part-time assistant. I also had a credentialing person. I had a biller. I mean, I had people helping me, and it was still so much admin that I decided, wow, this is not feeling nourishing for me anymore. And I had a wonderful mentor who said, you don't have to wait to get out. You can decide this is not for you. And feel good about how you've launched these women into private practice. Most of the women that came on to my practice ended up leaving and doing their own practice or making other choices that were good for them. And so I do feel good about that. And just being able to decide this is not for me long term. I don't have to keep doing this, even though it appears to be successful to everyone else, if it's not working for me.
Awesome. I'm so glad you said that. What are you most excited about in your business right now?
So I think what I'm most excited about is really helping moms differentiate from all of the messages that they've been given about who they're supposed to be as a mom, all the societal expectations, all the motherhood myths, and really finding who is it that I am? What do I bring? What are my strengths? And recognizing that they are likely exactly the kind of mom that their children need, that their children come from them, many of the children of neurodivergent mamas are also neurodivergent, and the things that standard parenting books would tell you to do probably aren't going to work anyways. So it's really good, I think, to recognize this and to find what works for you and what works for your children, and to feel good about that.
Beautiful. I also feel like, even so, I'm a mom of an adoptee and another kid who I birthed, and I feel like being neurodivergent in a certain way, I wouldn't have thought this before, but I've come to really believe like being neurodivergent makes me a better parent than I would otherwise be to both of my kids, in that I think it helps me be more likely to see them, each of them, for who they are. Mm-hmm. So, yes, to everything you're saying.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I had to laugh, and actually my sisters used to laugh at me a lot about this when my kids were younger, because I learned later that I was neurodivergent and had ADHD, and also about my children later. But many of the things that they were doing that weren't your standard, ways of responding to things just made sense to me. And I'd be like, yeah, of course. And, even when my older son wouldn't want to go to school or wouldn't want to do his homework, I'm like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
My husband would be like, wait, he has to learn to do his homework. I'm like, but it doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why he would have to. So, yeah, it's kind of funny.
That's really good. That's really funny. I remember certain worksheets where I was like talking to my kid, and he was like, why do I have to do this? And I was like, let's just fake our way through this one. It doesn't actually seem like it's very important.
Yes.
So, yeah. Thank you so much, Robin. This has been so much fun.
Oh, thank you, Annie. I've loved talking with you.
To learn more from Robin, go to ayanacounseling.com. That's AIYANA counseling.com. I want to thank Ames Palms for editing this podcast. If you found this episode supportive, please do a couple of things. Share it with your favorite therapist or healer. That is absolutely the most important way we reach more people. And if you haven't already, please hit follow and give us 5 stars. That is so helpful to this podcast. And thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.